they have questions. So we're on our CIP bond strategy meeting number 3. So what we've been doing is bringing these strategies as sort of how we're building up to the 2026 bond. Today, we're going to be talking about how we're putting everything together. So next slide. So just as a reminder, last meeting, we talked about the bridge funding. And so we went through how we're going to get from our 2020 bond, which was a 4-year bond, to the 2026 bond, which is a 6-year bond. And so how we were going to spend and how we sort of populated that 103 million that gets us in that bridge funding to 2026. So today we're going to talk not about the bridge funding. This is now about how we're populating the 2026 bond. The next slide. Okay, so you've seen sort of this funnel that we're talking about, all of the sort of data-driven factors that go into our decision-making when it comes to our bond. And so the bag of rocks that will forever live on is there. And so we went, next slide. We came in February and we talked about a strategy for Audrey Moore Rec Center. With a glimmer of hope that we were able to also do Franconia. That's a very large chunk of the 2026 bond that we, yes, with a glimmer, big glimmer, not more than a glimmer, a shining light of hope that we could also do Franconia Rec Center. And that's a very large chunk of our 2026 bond. So that's 75 million that's sort of already been populated. So those rocks are solid. Next slide. Ma'am.
You said 75 or 85?
85, sorry, 85. Okay. Thank you for the math. Next slide. So what we're going to be talking about today is that other fairly largest chunk of the rocks, which is that deferred capital replacements and renovations and the minor new construction. So these are what we're calling, next slide. These are our level of effort projects. These are the projects that allows us to take care of the majority of what's on this slide. It's everything has a life cycle, playgrounds, trails, roads, bathrooms, and so they all come up for the normal life cycle replacement. So how do we renovate a playground or a trail or fix a nature center, the roof on a nature center? That's this chunk of money. Next slide. That was a first hike winner, I think 2 years ago, photo. So just to remind you of the definitions when I say level of effort versus standalone. A standalone project in the CIP is an individual self-contained project. It's a specific item, it's got a scope, a budget, a deliverables, and it's timed. Do you need to? But it's timed. Think Audrey Moore Rec Center, Mount Vernon Rec Center, our large parks that we just finished, the McLean Central, Mount Vernon Woods Park. Those are large standalone projects. When you think of them, they usually have a groundbreaking and a ribbon cutting. They're those very large projects. Level of effort projects are a more support type activity. They're short amounts of work that must be repeated periodically. So think of them as, when I say a level of effort, what we're going to be deciding on for the work plan and the 2026 bond is what level of effort do we want to put into playgrounds? What level of effort do we want to put into trails? What level of effort do we want to put into bathrooms? That's why they're called level of effort projects. Okay. So here's what we're doing. For the level of effort projects, we have 12 categories. The categories are shelters, outdoor restrooms, amusements, courts, roads and parking lots, athletic fields, rec centers and aquatics, RMI sites, trails, golf, playgrounds, and then supporting infrastructure. That's more of a catch-all. Each one of these categories has a division that owns it. So playgrounds are owned by Park Development Division. Melissa sort of is the project lead for playgrounds. What she does is she then gets together a team of internal stakeholders. So it'd be operations, RMI, different people throughout the agency. And they go through and they look at, next slide. first thing that they're going to do is they're going to look at conditions. So this is on the right, our conditions assessment. We kind of talked in a previous board item about sort of how we do our conditions assessments. A is excellent. All features operate flawlessly. B is very good. Optimal performance with minimal issues. C is good. Asset performs its core functions adequately. When you get into the D and F, D is asset has significant limitations in functionality, and F is failed. Asset cannot perform its intended function. Often when you get to F in certain facilities, that means a closure of that facility. And so what the team does, they look at the conditions assessment for all 230 playgrounds. And then with a cursory look at equity, they came up with a top 10 list of projects. They also looked at geographic parity. They didn't want to necessarily put in the top 10 two playgrounds that were within a block and a half apart, for instance. And so they come up with this top 10 list with usually most of them had a pocket list of another 10. So top 10, then like a waiting room or what's it called?
Parking lot.
Parking lot. Next slide. So here's an example of the playground top 10 list. So we have the list of projects, then it goes sort of into this planning machine. Torsia runs the planning machine, and we take a little bit of a deeper dive. Next slide. This is where we are right now. So the deeper dive is, we'll get into that in a second. So we have gotten about 12 of these meetings. So what they do is they come into this room and they meet with a committee of all of the division directors and the director's office. And they go through a presentation that explains their top 10/20 list. And we talk about it. We talk about, hey, that one is right next to this other thing that we know is broken. Hey, if we do this playground, we can do X. We're just sort of spitballing ideas. It also gives us an opportunity to say, really? Because I went by this playground and it seemed like it was really bad. Like, yeah, you thought that was bad. You didn't look at these 4. These 4 are worse. So we can talk, it's a little bit of a back and forth of testing some of the assumptions to make sure that we have a really solid top 10 list. So we're almost through with those meetings. Next slide. The next step is to take all of those individual lists and they start going into that planning vortex. And we're going to take a deeper dive in looking at PROSA. So PROSA is going to tell us which projects actually might open up some of these categories. Which projects have a really high carrying capacity. So there might be a playground. One playground is a D, but it's the only active recreation playground within a 10-mile radius. Another one is a D, but it has another playground 2 blocks away. We're going to lean heavily on this one. Improving park access. Trail projects that open up access to the 5-minute walk to parks would be prioritized higher than maybe a trail connection that doesn't open up any access to parks. Next slide. We're also going to be putting in other planning studies. Some of them are finished and some of them we're working on them right now. The playground study to look at play deserts and really be looking at the size and scope of playgrounds. There might be some playgrounds that shouldn't be replaced in kind because they're just high volume, right next to a road, has a parking lot, has a bathroom. That might be a really good candidate for a larger playground. Maybe there's a playground that's in the middle of the woods, and the question is, do we even want to replace this playground? This is a safety hazard. We want to pull this out, and maybe we can put that money towards expanding another playground. We're undergoing an artificial turf study because we want to look at the equity of all of the synthetic fields by PAR value. So we're looking at that so we can be determining sort of what our priorities are for athletic turf fields. I believe I mentioned that in the bridge funding conversation because that was one of the categories that we had suggested to be able to do is one artificial turf conversion, and we wanted to do that based on the results from artificial turf study. And then a trail study, we're looking at just a trail plan to have a frame of what our priorities are with trails. What are we trying to get to? What are our destinations, loops or links or connections? Next slide. And then, this is why lovely Ferris is sitting here, is going to talk about this really awesome new tool that she created. And so we wanted to look at PROSA and how that opens up access to PlaySo. You got it over at the top of the thing. Yeah, hold
Yep,
on, sorry,
intentional,
that's why, it's
intentional.
intentional, got it. But we also wanted to look at, when we're prioritizing projects, we want to look at historic investment and historic disinvestment. So before we pick those two playgrounds, maybe one playground is a D, another playground is a D, but this one is in an area that's had $15 million spent on parks in the area, and this one is an area that hasn't had any amount of money invested in it. So we want to lean towards areas that have sort of historic disinvestments. So instead of putting this through individual slides, we thought it was great if Ferris came and just demoed it. So I'll turn it over to you.
Yes, so I'm happy to be here tonight. I wanted to first begin by highlighting that we really designed this tool.
Introduce yourself and tell them that what you're
Oh, sure, yeah.
And then where you work.
Okay,
Yes,
of course.
for the record.
This is my first board meeting, excuse me. My name is Ferris Agatoni. I am a GIS analyst with the Park Authority, and I work in the IT services branch. Okay, so the first thing I wanted to do was really highlight that we developed this application for staff. So as Torsia and any of the other Park Authority staff use this application, they are able to sort and organize all of our historic CIP information from fiscal year 2012 to 2024. The data comes out of our focus system, so it's very accurate. It comes out of our system of record, and these are all of the projects that have been capitalized in each fiscal year. I will update this dashboard on an annual basis moving forward. So of course, we only have through fiscal year 24, but moving forwards, it will go through 25, 26, etc. I also wanted to highlight over here, I'm using my mouse to circle it. We have data to show the project cost by fund. So I know it's a little bit small on your screens. Let me know if I need to zoom in any, but we have 9 funds over here, and you can break down the project cost by fund. Lastly, the active and under construction projects are not included. This is only completed projects that are of the CIP nature. Okay, so the application is organized in 3 primary sections. The first one is the map, which you can see here. It is zoomable, so you can move in and out. And as you can see, these bubbles change size. We refer to these as clusters, and the size of the cluster is going to represent the total number of projects in an area. For the total valuation of those projects, you can look to the text on top. So for example, this cluster is about $24 million worth of projects. This cluster is worth about 15 million. Like I said, they update dynamically based on the viewing scale. So as you're zooming in, if we zoom into Burke Lake, for example, you can see here there's a cluster of about $12 million, and here there's a cluster of 486,000. But as you move in, you can clearly see the clusters moving apart so that it's easy to tell spatially within the park where we've spent dollars and how many projects have been completed within that specific area of the park. The parks are easily visible for context, and as you can see in the backgrounds, this purple and blue layer is the Park Authority Racial Equity Index. So it's easy to see at a glance how many projects we've completed, how much they're valued at, and then whether or not those parks are within an opportunity area. Also, as you zoom back into Burke Lake, for example, you can click on any of these clusters and note the number of projects within that cluster as well as the valuation. And then if staff need to dig down very deeply, perhaps I've clicked on right here, this is the golf at Burke Lake. If we need to dig down really deeply, we can actually go in and look at each individual project that was completed. And you can see here also the class or the subclass of the project. The next thing I want to highlight as far as an organization of the application standpoint goes is outside of the map. here, this column, as well as the tables on the outside. These are all designed to be quick at a glance metrics for staff. So those are going to go ahead and show you, based on the information that you're looking at on the map, how the metrics are organized. Total dollars spent, total number of projects, etc. As I mentioned, we have subclass down here, the fund that I've already highlighted, and then we've also organized it by supervisor district. Like I said, the class down here, this is designed based on the way that the data is structured in Focus. And the class and subclass of the projects, those are defined by the Department of Finance when we input the project into Focus. So that's also how I've displayed them here. So you can see down at the bottom, we have some land, building improvements, and then they do group some categories together. Lastly, over here on the left, we have filters, and this is really where the application shines for staff. Right now, we're just looking at all of the data across the county. Zoom back out here. But if staff needs to answer a specific question, which is often what staff is asked to do, they can use these filters over here on the side to query the data to get at the answer to a really specific question. So for example, if they need to look at only information within a certain supervisor district, there's a filter for that. If they only wanted to look at projects that had been completed in an opportunity area, for example, you can go ahead and click that button and the map as well as the metrics automatically update to show that filter. So here you can see we've got a lot of projects over here in Mason, but as you can see, the dollar amount spent isn't always reflective of the total number of projects. So over here, we've got about $6 million. In Mason, we also have 6 million, but they're just done in different locations within the district. You can also apply multiple filters at the same time. So for example, if staff was asked, okay, we only want to look at the last 5 years of projects, but we also only want to look in opportunity areas, you could come down here and select the last 5 years. And you can see as I'm clicking, the application is updating automatically to show you within the last 5 years, within opportunity areas, we've spent $21.8 million. You can see here how those are split out by district, as well as how those are split out by fund. One of the values of the application here is that staff can look at the data spatially as well as tabularly. So if we wanted to look at maybe projects that weren't in an opportunity area, but were near an opportunity area, because folks that weren't necessarily in the opportunity area might get increased access to a project or an amenity, you can do that too. So here you can see we've got Linclair over here, or these are opportunity areas, but they're still quite proximate to Franconia. So an increased number of projects or an increased dollar amount spent in Franconia could also impact these opportunity areas. That's really what I wanted to highlight. I'm happy to take questions or talk through any other specific examples.
Would we like to, before we take questions, because we have a couple more slides, but I do want to take questions about this app, but we have a quorum now, so do we want to read in Tim and Faisal? Yes.
All righty. Virginia law authorizes remote participation of board members provided that a policy exists to ensure that such remote participation is consistently administered. This board has approved policy 111. Any such remote attendance must be approved by the board as long as the physical quorum of the board is actually present. Voices of the remote participants are able to be heard by everyone in the room, and the remote participation comports with the policy. Step 1 is verification that the remote participant's voice is clear, audible, and at an appropriate volume for the meeting room, and confirmation of their location. We have 2 board members joining us remotely this evening. Mr. Khan, are you connected to this meeting remotely?
Yes, I'm at my residence in Providence District.
Thank you very much. I move that Mr. Khan's voice may be adequately heard in his location.
Second the motion.
All in favor? Any opposed?
Aye.
That motion carries. And then, Tim, can you state your name and location from where you were calling?
Sure, Tim Hackman. I'm in a rental property in Blue Ridge, Georgia.
All right. I move that Mr. Hackman's voice be adequately heard from his location.
Second the motion.
All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, that motion carries. And then step 2 is to verify that the remote participant's physical absence comports with the policy. Pursuant to the Park Authority's Policy 111 for remote participation in public meetings, I move that Faisal Khan and Tim Hackman be permitted to participate remotely in this meeting because it comports with the policy we adopted and a physical quorum is present here at the Park Authority Boardroom 9th floor Harity Building.
Second the motion.
All in favor? Any opposed? All right, that motion carries and we are back to business.
I've got a question, but first a comment. Wow. Congratulations. Great job.
Thank you so much.
Very entertaining. And now the question. We have access to it to play with it?
This is for staff. This tool is specifically for Park Authority staff.
It's our first board meeting. It's good. That was.
Have any job
You said
openings?
no well. But absolutely, when we're talking about, I mean, this is a tool that we should be using to analyze things. So if you're, if we're at a stage, we're doing a CIP and it's like, oh, we have a question as to how much, and we'd like to see what the historic thing, then we can, the issue is not the tool to play around with. It's like any other tool without a professional behind it to interpret it. It can be taken completely wrong. So like she was talking about the bubbles, those are project types. And if you were to zoom into someplace and you were to say, hey, Burke Lake has gotten, 2 gobs of money. But then you zoom in and it's like, it was all like 3 irrigation projects in the golf course, which is different than the lakefront. And we have to really be able to look into those things. So we want to make sure that these data comes with a person. So it'll be Ferris, it'll be Torsha, it'll be somebody to be able to interpret what it is.
Okay.
And it's also in the GIS, so it can't go out of the system. Or GIS thing, so.
But we could, if we wanted to, we could introduce a motion
For what?
for the board to have you direct them to give us access to. it.
No.
We could probably get consensus.
No, because it's proprietary. It's the county GIS. I don't think we can give the county GIS layers outside of the.
It is behind the firewall. Yeah,
It's
we
behind the
cannot.
firewall.
I'm
Yes.
sure if we wanted to, there is a way we could get access. If we really wanted to push it.
There's a particular report that you're looking. for.
Yes,
No,
right.
but anyway, wonderful job. Congratulations.
Question.
Sure.
And I echo that. This is really cool. I was wondering, like, when you hover over like the bubbles,
Mhm.
is there any way that populates the list of the areas or the list of the parks?
Yes, so it will. Let's go back to Burke Lake as an example. So, or actually, no, let's use over here because there's smaller parks clustered. So when you click on any of the clusters, we get this
Oh,
pop
and
up.
then you go,
Yeah, so this will represent the total number of projects. It also tells you the total acquisition cost, which is the same as what's shown in the label.
Mhm.
So that's the total project cost.
right,
And then here you can see where the majority of the projects in the cluster were completed. So this doesn't mean that all 18 of these projects happen at Green Spring,
already.
but it means that most of them were at Green Spring. If you did want to look at the specific parks within
That's where you
this,
go to that. Okay,
yes, you can do that right here. And then you can click through.
yeah, okay.
You can dig down really deep and look at specifically, like this one was the HVAC system for Clark House. You can do that as well, if needed.
So as detailed as you want to go, you can do that.
Yes.
I did have a question tied to something, Jay.
Oh, sorry, sorry.
No,
I was bringing him up to speak because I missed the beginning of this awesome presentation.
sure. And either of you can help me with this.
Oh.
So, you had mentioned that you weigh sometimes. Like if you had 2 parks and one has, one closer to it that's working fine and the other doesn't, that you weigh that. How do you do that also within the context of, let's say maybe one park has had a lot of money?
That's exactly. So we have, the way that it's built is that before, it's just sort of just the facts, ma'am. So we want to make sure that it is clean it is conditions assessment, it is geographic parity, it is very clean. It's not. So then when we start to put them into these planning tools is when sort of the art comes in of saying, okay, hey, theoretically speaking, our top 10 condition assessment playgrounds, I'm just using playgrounds, are all in Mason District. We're gonna do 10 playgrounds in Mason District and not do, but the next 10 are splattered around. So let's look at that. Let's look at PROSA. Let's figure out the 10 that are in the district, that's playgrounds, but we might have artificially turfed 17 fields in those parks. So the community's gotten something, whereas the next 11 through 15 might be in parks that haven't gotten anything for the last 10 years. So we want to make sure that we're spreading all of the categories around instead of looking at one category specifically, because it really does matter, like the total investment that people have sort of seen our agency put into their parks.
Because if you have a park that has already seen quite a bit of investment, but it happens to be a park that really serves a greater proportion, that still is justification.
That's what one of the many great things about what Ferris has built is that we're able to see it. Is it 10 years?
Yeah, it'll be the last 12 years.
Okay, plus 12 years. So it might be something where, hey, look at this bubble. This is about what I was saying about the bringing somebody in. This bubble shows that we've spent X amount of MLK is a really great example. We spent X amount of money on MLK pool. We're redoing the pool. We have the trail system that we're doing. We just redid the tennis courts. We did the bathrooms. That's all since I've been here, 2 years. So that's to bring it up to where it should have been for the last 20 years. So we wouldn't hold that. We got to get it. So it might still not be to where you could put it next to like a Burke Lake. It is great. It's not that, but so something might be on the sort of come up, but we had to split it through years. That's sort of the art of looking at it versus the science.
The hard numbers.
Then there's sometimes with the money, while very important, some things are just really expensive. And it's really great when we redo irrigation or pipes or culverts or whatever it is. We need to do them, but the public doesn't see that. So even though we put $1 million of investment someplace, they might not register that as $1 million of investment. Does that count really that against you that you don't get anything recreational, but you got a new culvert, right? For like $1 million.
Gotcha. Thank you.
So the glimmer for Franconia District, for example, how is that showing up on here that what we might be?
This is not projects, this is what we have spent. This
Okay.
is not future looking.
This
No.
is looking back.
Correct.
Okay.
On that subject of, just trying to measure what has been spent in each district, this only includes CIP money, right? So
That's correct.
it wouldn't include other types of money that was spent through other funds?
Yeah, this one just includes anything that was capitalized.
It
could be a proper, it could be a telecom, it could be operating funds, it could any source that was capitalized.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Kyle's made a point about the dollars spent up here if this is 12 years,
Mhm.
we're only at 151 million.
Well, I have a filter on right now. So
Okay.
this is the last 5.
It's 350 million.
Yeah,
All right, that
Yep.
makes more sense.
there you go. Yeah.
I was just thinking that, different areas have different needs. I mean, if you have an area that's primarily like forested or something versus like heavily populated, or, an area that's mostly senior living community, like you're not going to invest a lot in playgrounds, so I'm just wondering, is the other money that's spent in various areas, is that small enough that it doesn't matter? Like this is really these are the numbers we should be looking at and thinking about, like where's money been spent by the Park Authority? Or are we just trying to talk about capital improvement here and the other money we have to think about? I mean, I guess that's sort of the magic that comes in when you guys are talking about this. Do you have to sort of factor those other investments separately?
So proffers are not included here.
No,
There are
proffers are
proffers.
anything that gets capitalized to improve the park or the location itself is in here regardless of what the funding source is. But things like what you're talking about, like a natural resources management plan, that's separate. That's separate. That's not necessarily something that's
Please, that one.
capitalized.
No,
Yeah.
that one, just Sarah.
Oh, yeah,
turn it that
That's
way.
not necessarily something that's capitalized.
That would be captured in kind of the conversation. I mean, in terms of, the
Like
plan.
which ones aren't capital, aren't captured? Type of thing?
Just those things like the natural resources management plan wouldn't be captured here. It's those things that are improvements on or about the land.
Yeah, and you can't. It's not a really good test of, where, because we'd have to separate it out. Sully is going to have huge amounts of, because it's got so much natural resources, areas versus Reston, Hunter Mill, which doesn't have hardly, any. We wouldn't want to
Overweight.
right. We want to make sure that natural resources is, yes, but there are, yes.
So
but there's
basically, is a way to think about this, these are the recreational pieces, and then
No, it's infrastructure. It's infrastructure. I don't think of, I know we use CIP, but I don't think of natural resources as infrastructure when we're talking about like prescribed burns or reforestations, or I don't think of those as infrastructure. This is the actual dollars that when people go out and they look at it as to, I got a new playground, I got a new field, I got a new trail, like the bridge got replaced, a new park. So that's why we calculate proffers, because if you look at it, like Hunter Mill, it's a good example of a district that's always going to be on the kind of lower side when it comes to CIP, because they have so much proffers. And so we spend a lot of, same thing with a lot of Providence. I think that those two things, Kyle never gets a proffer. So, so the majority of anything that happens in Braddock is going to be a CIP, spend. So we have to balance that as well to make sure that like Hunter's Mill everybody doesn't get equal CIP, and then Hunter Mill gets the proffers. And then, yeah.
So I'm right with you, the exact same subject, but the opposite end of that subject. So I'm assuming that, and I'm looking at this with an equity lens, all right? When we spend a lot of money on a golf course, for example, and of course, rec center, whatever, those things are things that are pay things often. Is there a filter where we can knock those out? So we're really looking at things that are equally accessible for everyone. Is there a filter to do that?
Yes, we can take out the rec centers, and a lot of times those numbers are really big. Most of that because of their, like Mount Vernon is going to be huge because of all the money that's going into Mount Vernon. I think that when you're talking about like rec centers, it's like it's true to a point. So I'm gonna pick on Kyle for a second.
For sure. But
yeah.
And it's okay. The question was just,
Yeah.
do we have the capability to do that?
Ferris has the capability to do anything with NGIS. She's a Wonder Woman. Anything that you want, she can do.
Would you be manually pulling those things, or is there actually a filter?
We have filters here for all of the different subclasses. So down here at the bottom,
Okay.
you can see there's a variety of subclasses all defined by the Department of Finance. So when we capitalize an asset, it's always assigned a class and a subclass.
Okay,
Mhm.
thank you.
So it would be easy to pull out, say, rec centers and golf courses.
So that building improvements, that's that 282 something that's a million, 232. Is that a number?
The 232
Projects, okay.
have been completed that are building improvements. So we can go within and look at which of those building improvements were rec centers. We could look at which of the building improvements would be HVAC. That could also potentially be a rec center. So we would need to do a little bit of additional work to see what was a rec center. Within those building improvements, some of those might not be rec centers, but that is possible.
It's really okay. So it's within the realm of possibility. It's just not set up quite yet.
If I could add to that, we are beholden to how the Department of Finance for the county classifies all of the assets and the subclasses and all. It rolls into that for simplicity and making sure that Ferris has clean data here. So some of those things would be a little bit manual with that, but we already have that sort of sub data set that we can pull that out of it. It's not difficult again, Ferris can do anything. So it's not difficult for us to be able to get to that point.
So Faisal or Tim, did you guys have any questions?
There are
No,
like
no,
four more
fine.
slides
Thank
to
you.
the presentation.
It's a great,
I was gonna go to you.
great tool.
I just have one question, Richard. So this covers 12 years of data.
That's correct.
Does that mean that when you come back next year, let's say you have 13 years of data?
Yes,
So
yes,
building
it will. Yes.
going forward.
That's right. And that's one of the reasons that we designed this based off of focus, because that's going to be our system of record. That's the way that the county capitalizes assets. So projects will continue to be put into focus, and every year on an annual basis, I'll get the new projects and add those into the dashboard.
This is more of a comment and it's really a Sarah J thing. So we've done 218 different parks, which simple math means 200 parks haven't been touched in 12 years.
I would, yes, I think we probably
Really?
have 100 parks that
Stream
probably,
Valley.
Stream Valley Park, that don't have anything in it.
Parks that aren't
Okay,
developed.
yeah.
Yeah, we have dozens of undeveloped parks.
Yeah, that's fair. Okay, that makes sense. Never mind.
Now, if we were to do the math, and this is a great intern project, or do the math and try to figure out which ones have nothing in them. And then take those out and then see
Right.
how many parks actually don't have, because that's what New York City did. So in New York City.
That would be very
Yeah.
nice to know.
If I could just answer that question, Ferris just informed me that she can do anything and she has an app for that.
I do.
That information.
That would be, I'd be very curious to know if.
Yeah.
It's 218 out of 420, or is it 218 out of 250
Yeah.
parks with actual stuff in them?
I could get back to you with an exact number. I do have a data set called the Park Amenities data set. It services the Park Amenity Locator, which is our public web application.
Yeah.
And within that one, I'm only displaying public amenities, but on the back end, I can also query the parks that do not have public amenities, because we still maintain records for those. So I can get you that number.
That would be very nice.
Sure.
Wrapping this little part of it, I know I'm coming back to you.
Yep.
Farah, it was very nice meeting you. I hope you enjoyed meeting us.
Thank you. Yes.
Thank
It's
you very
mutual.
much.
Thank you.
And you've got a couple more slides, Jay.
Yes. Oh, Tim's the big
Oh,
screen.
Tim.
Okay, and next slide. You can stay. Unless you really want to read it, in case you think about other questions. Okay, all right, so some of the other factors that we're gonna be sort of putting into is like, is the park a limit? So one of the reasons why we meet as the same group, and the owner of playgrounds comes, and the owner of picnic shelters, and the owners of restrooms, is what happens when we are looking at the playground list and you see highlighted Stone Park, right? That's on the top 10 list. And then athletic fields comes a week later, and Stone Park is on the list for athletic fields. And shelters comes 2 weeks later, and Stone Park is on the list for shelters. At that point, we're like, hold on. Maybe we need to pull this out of these lists and make it, next slide. Oh, sorry, stay here. Make it part of the new projects list. That park might just be a lemon, meaning we have a lot of stuff that's on the list. We don't want an economy of scale, means that we can do those projects cheaper if we bring them all together as one whole park project. It might even be a situation where it might not be a whole park project, but we might decide that we want to take the amount that we would spend in Stone Park and deferred capital and add it to the new park projects. We can do that park with an economy of scale, and we can save ourselves like $600,000. Next slide. I hope you saw your park. Everybody got a park.
Mine are apparently the worst.
I didn't think you were going to be here for that part of the presentation. The next thing that we're going to be working on after we've determined that top 10 list and sort of fed things through various planning lenses is how much. And so with each of the 12 categories, the idea isn't necessarily that rock, that's that $55.5 million rock. We have to figure out how much goes in each category. And so part of that, of figuring out how much money, and that's the level of effort, how much level of effort do we want to put into shelters? How much do we put in outdoor restrooms, courts, roads, parking lots, athletic fields, etc. Some of the things that tools we're going to use to determine how much is our needs assessment, the parks count. So we want to see what our residents value the most. So if the residents value playgrounds as their number one thing, then we don't want to spend the same amount on playgrounds as we spent on something else. I don't want to say something because then people like, you hate that thing. Right, pickleball courts, right. Pickleball courts, thank you, Sarah, for leading me into that. Because that's not what they value the most. And so our parks count is really going to allow us to dive into these categories, especially in the 26, 27, 28 years, once we get those data back. The second thing is, how much does everything cost? We can't just give, $1 million in natural surface trails is like every natural surface trail that we have in our system. $1 million in a splash pad for Josh will get you 1/16 of a splash pad, right? And so it's a matter of scale. So we want to make sure that we understand how much each thing costs. So when the owner comes in, let's take courts. So Kim and her staff come in and talk about the courts and which ones are DNF, and they have their priority list. And then of that top 10, some courts, and I'm making stuff up, so please don't have to go down to studs, the equivalent of studs. Everything has to be built all the way up. So that's going to be expensive, more expensive than, look, I know you're rolling your eyes. I feel like what's the next one, Kim? Like the mill and overlay? Is that a thing? Okay, the overlay. So there's like different levels. So for each one, she's going to assign a general cost. And that will tell us how much those top 10 lists, if we do all of her list, it will cost this much to do the top 10 courts. And then Linwood says, well, I kind of want to do number 13. And then we come and say, okay, to do the next 3, it'll cost this much. Do you guys want to allocate this much to courts for the 6 years or for this next year? And then are we taking away from something else? What are we taking away from? And so the amount that it takes, the conditions assessment, also, if we have courts and only 2 of them are DNF out of all the courts, but 100 of our 240 playgrounds are DNF, we don't want to spend, we need to hit as many as we possibly can to get as many of them into that A, B, C, and D. And then other factors like ADA. There are ADA considerations that cause something to come up in the list. Do we have something that's like 17 stairs to get to the only playground in one area, that we need to do it just so we can get ADA accessibility? Next slide.
No, before you move.
Yeah.
Where would ADA be on this list of 12, or is it baked into each one?
It's baked into everyone.
Okay. Second question on this, define amusements for me?
What's amusements, Josh? Who has amusement? No, it's Kim. Yeah, Kim. Sells trains.
Okay, so splash pad is not an amusement.
Splash pads are aquatics.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
I have a question. So you mentioned that you put some value on what, the community says.
Mhm.
So let's say there's a part though that the community is saying, oh, we want shelters, but there's some other infrastructure that you're like, if we don't touch it, we're gonna have to fully replace it, right? So I guess I'm curious how you handle when.
So think of it as the people. So the people are looking at, the whole county people
Right.
are looking at for the needs assessment for the parks count.
Right.
So we can come back and we'll see it in my director's matters. We'll come back and say the community, the Fairfax County community, is really their number one priority, heading far and away, is trails. The next one is playground. The next one is natural areas. The next one is X, the next one is Y. That's going to determine, when we're going by and we're populating that 55 million, that's going to say, okay, we think that we should spend a quarter of the money that we have this year on those 4 things that the needs assessment says their top priority, is the residents' top priority. So that's kind of how it's not done in a park by park basis.
Okay.
That's done in general. Now, the park by park basis might be what Torsia comes in with PROSA, because we haven't even gotten to the whole park projects, and said, hey, this park really needs to get redone or developed for PROSA needs. That's when we sort of look into what goes in there. And then, so let's take a vacant park. This park that we just bought, Adu Park, has nothing. But if we were to develop it, we could open up 10-minute walk access to 1 billion people. So we want to develop it, but we want to develop it and have active social contemplative opportunities. So then Torsia then goes to the needs assessment. And instead of just saying, of course, we're going to put baseball fields there, they say, oh, wait, rectangular fields are the top priority of most of residents, and definitely residents in this geographic area. So the active recreation here will be a rectangle. We're proposing it to be a soccer field. And then the passive recreation, there's no trail system here. So we're going to put a trail that will help us sort of develop what goes into that park.
I guess what I'm curious about is where you're saying, okay, this is what is being identified in the needs assessment.
Yes.
But on the ground, if something pops up,
So, okay, so I understand your question now. So the level of effort projects, go to the next slide. Because I think this is the last slide. I think this will help. Okay. This is kind of how everything ties together. So we've got data that comes in the form of all of the things that we were talking about. Ferris's GIS, PROSA, needs assessment, all of those things. That helps us inform what rocks are in the bag of rocks. And how much. So right now, the only tried and true number here that you guys are kind of stuck with is Audrey Moore Franconia. Because we came and talked about that. So that's the 85 million. The 85 million is set. We could decide through the summer that we want to put all of the rest of the money into deferred maintenance and not have any money in acquisitions or natural cultural resources or new park projects. We could decide we want to do 17 parks. And that's all based on the information and the data we're going to be bringing to you to show what the needs are. And so the needs that we're talking about are these categories that then, to continue on around, informs the bottom, which is the cash flow. So the cash flow is how much money we have to spend every year. And then for the level of efforts projects, we will then be coming, so in FY27, all those categories, individual categories, we as staff are going to go through and we're going to propose a work plan that is not just playgrounds, bathrooms, it's mixed. So you see that work plan that has a shelter, a field, a bathroom, a parking lot. So now we're going to analyze the categories against each other. Say we have $2.5 million to spend, just making up numbers, in the cash flow for deferred maintenance. This is what we're proposing to do. And then you say, oh, why aren't you doing this playground? Well, that playground was number 7 on the list. So we have to go through 6 playgrounds first or take something else off. So that's kind of how that, and that's on a yearly basis. So we're going to do this analysis every year. So it's fresh because things change, situations change, conditions change.
thank you.
But if the supervisor says, I'm not gonna support a bond, to include this park, I might find some way to include it.
Don't give them ideas.
So that's,
I know you're trying to take all the politics out of it, but that's impossible.
well, it's stuff. So when we're doing this, that's up to you guys, as to what they're doing. The point for this is no longer can it be, it's a vacuum. That's fine. Supervisor wants a park. What are you guys not doing? What are you not doing? So we're taking $8 million.
To analyze it this carefully is nothing but positive. To have a good, solid, well thought out starting point to be able to defend your positions, nothing but positive.
The next steps are the new park projects. So the only things that are going to be named that we want to name at least the first few years is those new park projects. What we don't want is we figure out how many new parks we're going to do or park renovations. What this is not doing is the whole not supporting the bond. In FY29, let's do this park. Those decisions are made. The big park decisions are going to be made through this summer and next year. Generally speaking, up to a certain part. It's the deferred maintenance that we're doing on a year-to-year basis. So the fight, if you want to go back and forth and go back, is the new park projects right now is 3 to 4. That's it right now. That's 18 million. If you guys want to do 5, then you're taking out a deferred maintenance about 10 to 12 million dollars, which is a lot. So now when we come in and you come to me and you say, can you do the shelter? I'm like, no. Remember, you took that out to do this park. We only have enough money now to do 5 shelters every 6 years.
And because we're not doing the whole banking thing, we
Correct.
can't come back and say, can you hold this 1 million while we get some more money?
No.
A question about the land acquisition.
Yes.
If say in a particular time frame we do not acquire any land, that becomes part of that extra money that you came back.
So very good question. Thank you for asking.
Okay.
So one of the things that we were talking about earlier is the category. So in the past, we've gone with very specific categories, which is those percentages. Like we have to stay, we talked about it last time to make sure that by law, we're staying within that percentage for natural cultural resources. Some of that is chosen. We're trying to look into what are the what do we have to provide? What specificity? How much can we, because it gives you more flexibility. So like I would love to have natural, cultural, and acquisitions in the same pot at the very least, so that can be moved around. Right now, that's not how it works. You can't move, I can't take acquisitions. I could with the bankings. I just have to make it up but all of the percentages that we said we're going to spend have to be spent as,
So that you're trying to find a way
yes,
to not be beholden.
yes,
that
as much
percentage.
as we can, but also the other way. Because right now, 8 million doesn't buy you a lot in Fairfax County. So if something comes up, George Washington's, birthplace, second, whatever, comes up and there's no ability within our current CIP unless we go to the county and ask them for money. Now, thank you for asking about the natural, cultural, and that land acquisitions and the new park project. We're specifically waiting towards the end, because after we show you our needs in the top 10 and try to populate that deferred capital replacement and renovations, whatever's left, that's natural, cultural, new parks, and land acquisitions. Or we populate that, but it's squeezing the balloon either way as to which way we want to go. And those are the decisions, is how much are going in each rock.
Thank you.
More questions? Seeing no more questions and being ready for dinner, I'm going to adjourn the Planning and Development Committee.
All right, and we are in recess for about 15 minutes.
Look like a scientist. Around. Yeah. Around. Around.
Around what? So it's 218 out of 320. Okay. Live? Oh, sorry, I didn't realize you had turned it back on. All right, we are back from recess. We'll get into the main agenda. Brittany, I understand you're playing the role of Daedra this evening. Do we have any speakers? All right, thank you. We'll get in we have just one admin item. Administrative item number 1 is the recommended adoption of the minutes of the March 12th, 2025 Park Authority Board meeting. Do I have a motion? And the second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. We have no action items this evening. And just 3 information items. Information 1 is the annual resident curator program update. Info 2 is the Elk Lick Preserve and Poplar Ford Resource Protection Zone Master Plan updates. And information 3 is the update on the Ellie Doyle Park Service Awards. All of these were presented to and reviewed by the Park Authority Board during committee meetings held on March 12th, 2025. Chairman's matters, just one housekeeping item I'll take care of first. Due to lack of pressing matters, we're going to go ahead and cancel the April 9th board meeting. It's our only meeting in April, so we will not, after tonight, we will not meet again until May 14th. That is also the date of our joint EQUAC meeting that'll be held downstairs starting 6 o'clock. And then we'll be back up here for our normally scheduled board meeting. Again, the April 9th, and Diane will send out an email just to remind everybody of this. April 9th meeting is canceled. And we'll be back here again on the 14th. While I'm on the topic of housekeeping items, just a reminder, everyone, I know it's been moved a couple times, but the joint meeting with the Board of Supervisors also in May, that's May 20th at 3 p.m. over in the Government Center. We've had a few, speaking of Board of Supervisors, we've had a few budget meetings. I think all of them have been scheduled at this point, although I could be wrong about that. I think I've seen all of them. So if you haven't seen one, except for Supervisor Harebright for obvious reasons. So if you haven't seen one come through, check in with Lady Diana But other than Supervisor Harity, all of them do have a date at this point, and a couple of them have happened. They've been good conversations. It's a tough budget year though, so like I was when the budget came out, not particularly optimistic this year that we're going to see the same kind of success we have in the past couple of years. Last thing, yesterday the Board of Supervisors received a presentation on the potential Recreation and Entertainment Authority. That if anyone remembers, or if you're new to us, about this time I guess around over the summer last year, so not quite a year ago. Board matter from Supervisor Walkinshaw and Chairman McKay asks staff to review and study the potential of creating a recreation and entertainment authority, which to some people's minds seems there's a lot of overlap between them and what a park authority looks like. They finally received the report, kind of an update item during what committee was that? Economic Development Committee meeting yesterday morning. It's online. It's like 20 minutes or so. If anybody wants to check it out, it's worth listening to the conversation of board members more than the presentation itself. No action was taken at that committee. No next steps identified. It's not clear to me that this is going anywhere at this moment. I think there's still general interest from the Board of Supervisors that if there was a very specific desire or project in mind, this may come back up. But in general, I'm not seeing this really going anywhere. So we'll see, but we'll let you know if anything new happens there. But again, it's worth your 20 minutes of time if you got the opportunity to give that a listen. That's all I got, Jay.
Right, slide. Okay, so we had, as you know, we're in the middle of our Parks Count 2026 needs assessment. We had a virtual public meeting on March the 19th, and this is just from the virtual meeting responses. These are some of the responses from the virtual meeting. I'm going to read some out to you because the font is a little low. So on the left is when choosing to visit or use a park and or recreation amenity, check all criteria that are important to you. The number one thing, 63% was pleasing atmosphere, 56% convenience of hours, 56% proximity to residence or place of work, 56% specific functions at the park or amenity, and variety of recreation choices. So, and then it drops down to 25. So one of the things that and this is just one virtual public meeting, but this is why PROSA is so important, because we want to make sure that all of our residents have a 5-minute walk access, because it's one of the highest importance that they're valuing on why they would visit a park and or recreational amenity. And also the variety of recreational choices. You've heard me talk about a complete park experience. So it's not just a one thing. Top right, which 4 priorities are most important to your household? 42% develop new parks to improve park access. 58% improve the quality of existing parks and recreation amenities. And then it drops down 25% increase the variety of recreational opportunities. 67% enhance the preservation and education of natural resources across the county, and 42% improve equitable access. Then last, the park trails, recreation facilities, and open space offer various potential benefits to you and your household. Please indicate which benefits you believe are the most important to you or your household. 92% improve physical health and fitness, 92% improve mental health and reduce stress, 75% make Fairfax County a more desirable place to live, 75% preserve open space and the environment. So those are some sample of our polling questions. I look forward to seeing sort of all of it grouped together, and our consultant letting us know what our residents value most.
Before we move off this slide, so for really,
It's close.
no, that's fine.
You can read it.
For all 3 of them, the numbers on the right with the check mark by them, I'm assuming that's the count of the people who voted that way. So we've got
So we had 15 people online that night.
okay, so we had 15 people online and 40, 50 people voting, 27, 37.
No,
No, some of us.
They chose
it's-
multiple.
it's- you know,
Different.
Yeah,
Okay, so this is an account of, all right. Okay.
Okay, again, just one public meeting, and you said people logged in online as well. There's multiple ways that we're soliciting feedback, both through our virtual public meetings, our in-person public meetings, our online, and surveys that are we're sending out. Next slide. Oh, here we go. We also had an in-person workshop at Franconia Rec Center. Data collected on priorities and needs and experiences. We had a good time engaging with residents. And some of the survey QR codes shared with the public. So we had staff who volunteered to come out and man tables. We wanted to make sure that while we're doing that, we had, you see John Burke on the right, doing a nature walk with the kids while the adults learned about our parks count. So it's those kind of things that really set us apart. In general, when we're talking about soliciting feedback and talking about stuff, we're able to really cater to the whole family and their needs. And, the parks public meeting should always be fun. So great. Next slide.
What was the attendance for that? Do you have any sense of how many people came through?
You don't have the number.
Okay, more than 15.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, look at that. Yes. Yes.
That's in one kind of the far east part of the county. Are we looking at doing one elsewhere in the county at some point?
We just had one.
And we'll know, in terms of hearing back from the residents, we'll have an idea of geographically where it's coming.
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
I
Good deal.
imagine the majority of our respondents are going to come from the online survey and the survey, the sent out survey, the mailer, yeah. Okay, next slide. We had a public meeting, public comment meeting on the 20th of March for Banks Park. We are proposing, we've had the home that is sort of in that bottom right. You can't see it. It's in the bottom right of the concept. Has been vandalized. It's boarded up right now. We really need to remove the house. There are people in the community that really value the house. So we want to make sure that if we're removing the house, we're actually giving something back to the community. And so we have been working with the supervisor and using some proffer dollars and some end of year bridge funding to develop a couple of concepts for what we can do to that area. Concept A has a parking lot to the right coming in and a big looped trail, sort of a dog walking Heart Smart trail. The concept on the bottom, concept B, had a shorter loop and the parking lot was more into the middle of the park. Do you have a question? Mm-hmm.
Is there any historical value to the house?
The house was built in mid-century. It's a brick. I believe they already went through the process of attempting to, did somebody submit?
It stopped. It was going through a process and it didn't go any further.
Of historic preservation and it didn't, HBC it's not, it does not qualify.
So question, so at the lower one, there's not the dog trail?
No,
So not in either one of them.
Okay, good,
Just a walking path,
Mhm.
commemorative.
right, because you really will hear from folks.
it is a contemplative area. We can send you the side that has the
Okay, thank
the two things so you can see what's specifically on there. And next slide. Okay, so maybe not the newer Park Authority board members, but everybody else knows how much I love winning things. And so we won for the American Society of Heating, Refrigerating and Air Conditioning Engineers, which, is the coolest shirt ever. Oh, is Brendan still here? Right, Brendan, this is like the party after this was wild. So for the Cub Run Rec Center ESCO Phase 1, we won in the Technology Public Assembly Existing Building category. So it's a really big deal. Keith went down to Orlando at their conference to pick up our award. I will pass it around so everybody can see the wonderful that will go up someplace. You can see it. Red hot. Next slide. Speaking of that, RMI teammates graduated from NRPA's Revenue Development and Management School. So for those of you who don't, well, probably all of you, NRPA has there are multiple schools for Park and Rec. And the schools are week-long schools, twice 2 years cohort. So you go 2 years, and it's a week long, and it's an intensive course. There's a revenue and development school, there's maintenance school, there's supervisor school, and director school. I'm actually a regent. I teach at the supervisor school. That's usually in October. It is a wonderful experience where you are quite literally immersed with people from all around the country, and 8 to 9 hours of various classes that you go through. After the second year, you graduate, and there's a whole graduation ceremony that we do. And so this is a big deal. It's in Wheeling, West Virginia. So we're very proud of our graduates from Jim from Hidden Pond and Jim from Hidden Pond and Jordan from Frying Pan. Next slide. Artemis 1 moon tree planting on March the 20th at Observatory Park at Turner Farm. So it was a seed on NASA's Artemis 1 mission from November 16th to November 11th of 2022, commemorating the Apollo 14th mission that carried the first moon tree seeds into space. So we are going to have a moon tree over at Observatory Park at Turner Farm.
What kind of tree is it?
It looks like it's a loblolly. Loblolly.
The leaves are shaped like a crescent.
I have a loblolly story, not in public, but I'll tell you afterwards. I mean, it's fine. It's just very nerdy. Almost as nerdy as the word. Next slide. Yes, I'll tell you after. It's not a second. The 2025 Ellie Doyle Park Service Awards, the nominations are due Friday, May the 2nd. And these are the categories that we're going through. All nominations are due on May 2nd. And here's the Survey Monkey to go to. We will send these out so that you guys can have the link and be able to send it to everybody that you know. If you want it texted to you, you can just contact Diane or Lady Diana or me if you want to text it to people and not send the thing, or we can create something that you can send. But we want to make sure we have a lot of options for these awards this year, especially since there's a 2-year gap. So we want it to be awesome. Next slide. Is that it? I think that's it, right? No. Again, upcoming events. Spring is springing. So this Saturday we have the ribbon cutting for McLean Central Park at 9 o'clock in the morning. Saturday, April the 5th is Bluebells at the Bend at River Bend Park at 10 o'clock, and that goes mostly all day. I've heard that we're going to be very close to peak bloom for that. Do you think? Yes. Okay. Because it wasn't for the cherry blossoms. Poor cherry blossom festival. It was very sad. Not sad, but you know what I mean. Saturday, April 6th, 26th, big day, Earth Day. I know I talk about it all the time. I highly recommend if you have, the time to attend. It's April the 26th. It's at Sully Historic Site. It is the county's Earth Day. It is enormous. Last year our weather turned out, it was 2 days, really well. And I think we had 7,000 people.
The 19th would have been closer to the real Earth Day.
Well, Earth Day, well, the Earth Day, I think Earth Day itself is Easter, is an Earth Day on Easter
Yeah, it's
Sunday.
the day before Easter.
Yeah, so we
But the
did,
19th, the Saturday before, it would only be 3 days instead of 4 days away from the real Earth Day.
the what, say again?
The 26th, Saturday, the 19th,
Okay. That's not what we did, Linwood.
4 days versus.
We also needed to make sure people weren't out of town. Huntley's 50th anniversary, Wetlands Awareness Day is Saturday, May 4th. Again, I think I showed a video last year. It's quite the event. If you're into that kind of thing, which everybody should be. And then Saturday, May the 10th is Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Festival at Mason District Park at 12 p.m. Next slide. And I think that would be it.
Question.
Yes, ma'am. A.m. 10 a.m.
Good, I can sleep in.
You too.
I don't, I guess
You have
not.
to be-
It's actually 8:30 for us. It's 12:30 for everybody else.
9:30 and 9:40.
That was a mistake. That was a mistake.
But
At first and then how? That's a mistake. We probably would. He'll be on time. To the side, to the moment. Actually, he'll be 15 minutes early. It's fine.
All right.
Okay, I think that's it. That's like, oh no.
There's more.
Farmers markets. Farmers markets are starting. Let me, if you are planning on attending the ringing of the bell for the first farmers market in your area, please let us know, so we can snap a photo and get it on, social. We'll let you know if I'm gonna attend, them. I think some of them are in, travel times, but this is the list of, the farmers markets. I promise it feels like we just closed them. And that I feel like it was just over. So, that's really good.
So Supervisor Stork always likes to do that,
Hmm.
but if he can't make either of the two, can you guys let me know and I'll come do it?
Yeah,
Yes, there is.
he's ringing the bell. Be there. I shudder to ask, is that the last one? Yeah, okay, I think I read it wrong, sorry. And that's it.
Start online. Tim, do you have anything this evening?
No, I don't. Thank you. I pass. Appreciate it.
All right, Faisal,
Nothing from me, sir.
Rick,
I think.
Ken, Linwood, Jonah?
Pass.
All right then. All right, our last item this evening is closed session. So the Park Authority Board meeting is moving to closed session. Public participants online right now will be removed from the virtual meeting. If you'd like to rejoin the meeting when the closed session is ended, you can dial back into the meeting. The same dial-in information in, and you will be placed in a waiting room until the closed session has ended. So, Dr. Carter, you have a motion for us,
Are we,
or you
we're
have a
good?
script? Well, you can
Good?
get started, yeah.
Okay. I move the Park Authority Board recess and convene in closed session for discussion and consideration of matters enumerated in Virginia Code 2.2-3711 and listed in the agenda for this meeting as follows. Consultation with legal counsel and briefings by staff members or consultants pertaining to actual or probable litigation where such consultation in open meeting would adversely affect the negotiating or the litigating posture of the public body pursuant to Virginia Code 2.2-3711A7. C1, discussion of lease located at Braddock Park in the Springfield District.
I second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that motion carries, and we will now go into closed session. Somebody's gonna close it, all right.
Move the Park Authority Board return to open session.
Second the motion.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that motion carries, and I'll call for certification of topics discussed in closed session. Dr. Carter, you have another motion?
This is Cynthia Jacobs Carter, and I move the Park Authority Board certify that to the best of each member's knowledge, only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements prescribed by the Virginia Freedom of Information Act and only matters identified in the motion to convene closed session were heard, discussed, or considered in the meeting by the Park Authority Board.
Second?
Second.
All right, and then this is a roll call vote, so we'll go around. Linwood?
Yeah.
Jonah?
Yay.
Abena?
Yay.
Dr. Carter?
Yay.
Rick?
Yay.
Ken? Faisal?
Yeah.
Tim?
Yay.
And the chair also votes in the affirmative. What else do we got to do? We have, one more motion from Ken.
Move to approve the lease agreement with Fairfax Adult Softball for the batting cages located in Braddock Park in the Springfield District as discussed in the closed session.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that motion carries. We are done for this evening. See you all in a month.
So,
At some
Not
park
everyone.
event, you know,
huh?
at some park event, probably.
Well, that too.
I figured. So